Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the cobblestone shoes of someone who probably hasn't been given enough credit, the Renaissance artist. You've seen the names Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael. We see their work in glossy books under perfect lighting scrubbed clean of all the mess. But tonight we're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to find out what it was really like to live and create during this supposedly golden age. It's not the glamorous life you imagine. Forget the romantic notion of a genius in a pristine studio, a muse gracefully posing in the corner. The reality is a world of gut-wrenching labor, toxic materials, and the constant nagging fear of starvation. You'll probably be grateful you're safe and sound in your bed, because frankly, you probably wouldn't have survived the first year. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in Florence not with the romanticized visions of grand architecture and burgeoning genius, but with the brutal reality of a 15th century city hitting you right in the face, or rather the nose. The stench is the first thing that assaults you. It's a thick, almost palpable curtain of odors. The air is heavy with the mingled smells of unwashed bodies, rotting refuse thrown from windows, and the pervasive, acrid tang of animal dung from the countless horses, donkeys, and pigs that share the narrow, muddy streets with you. The Arno River, which you expected to be a tranquil source of beauty, is more of a communal sewer, a brown, sluggish ribbon carrying away the city's waste. This is the truth of Florence, not the sanitized postcard version. The art you've come to create is a world away from the environment you must now navigate daily. You clutch your meager belongings, a small satchel with a few precious brushes and some worn paper, and push your way through the crowd trying not to step in the overflowing gutters. Your destination, a master artist's workshop, a place you hope will be your salvation. The workshop, however, is not the hallowed sanctuary you envisioned. It is a chaotic, noisy, and often filthy place. The air inside is thick with the smell of turpentine linseed oil and the faint, sweet, sickly scent of drying plaster. The master, a gruff man with paint-stained hands and a perpetually scowling face, barely gives you a glance. You are just another pair of hands, another mouth to feed a potential source of cheap labor. Your apprenticeship begins not with a canvas or a sculptor's chisel, but with a bucket and a broom. The first few weeks, maybe even months, are dedicated to the most mundane, back-breaking tasks. You grind pigments by hand, a monotonous hours-long chore that leaves your arms aching and your fingers stained with vibrant but dangerous colors. You carry heavy buckets of water from the well, sweep the workshop floor, and prepare the gesso, a chalky mixture used to prime wooden panels for painting. This isn't the life of a creative genius, it's the life of a common laborer. You're part of a medieval-era factory, not a temple of art, and the hours are brutal from dawn until well after dusk, with only brief breaks for meals that are often little more than stale bread and watery wine. There's no time for daydreaming, no space for your own artistic aspirations. The only thing on your mind is the next task, the next order from the master. One of the most surprising and frankly horrifying truths you discover is the hidden danger in the very materials you work with. The stunning, vibrant colors that bring life to a canvas are made from some of the most toxic substances known to man. Take, for instance, a beautiful, rich red. To create it, you might be tasked with grinding cinnabar, which is essentially mercury sulfide. As you painstakingly grind it into a fine powder, you're inhaling tiny particles of mercury, a poison that will slowly, insidiously creep into your body, affecting your nervous system, your mind. You don't realize it now, but your trembling hands, the forgetfulness, the strange mood swings that will come later, they are not a sign of your artistic temperament, but a symptom of slow-acting mercury poisoning. Another example is the brilliant yellow of orpiment, which is arsenic trisulfide. You handle it without a second thought, the fine yellow dust coating your clothes and your skin. The beautiful, rich blue of ultramarine is made from lapis lazuli, a semi-precious stone that is so expensive it's often reserved for the most important commissions like the Virgin Mary's robes. But the cheaper, more common blue azurite also contains copper carbonate, and too much exposure to its dust can cause respiratory problems. Even lead white, the most common white pigment, is, you guessed it, a lead compound. The constant exposure to lead can cause everything from abdominal pain to irreversible brain damage. Historians still debate whether the early deaths and documented eccentricities of many Renaissance artists were due to the harsh realities of their time, or a direct consequence of their trade's silent, unseen killers. There is a dark irony in creating masterpieces that will outlive you, with the very materials you use to create them also being the cause of your premature end. You learn to be careful to wear a cloth over your mouth and nose when you grind, but you know deep down that it's not enough. The damage is being done one beautiful color at a time. The work is physically exhausting, but the slow, methodical poisoning is the real terror, a threat you can't even see. Your life is a constant series of errands and tasks with little room for actual artistic expression. You are a glorified servant, learning the craft through imitation and repetition, not through free-form creativity. You watch the master and the more senior apprentices paint, taking in their techniques, but you rarely get a chance to hold a brush for anything other than a simple background or a small, unimportant detail. Your job is to make sure the workshop runs smoothly, that the materials are always prepared, and that the master has everything he needs. It's a humbling and often demoralizing experience. Your dreams of painting grand frescoes and stunning portraits are constantly deferred by the reality of mucking out the studio and running errands for your master. You learn the invaluable but brutal truth that the artistic life isn't just about talent. It's about endurance, discipline, and a tolerance for tedious, repetitive work. But you endure because you know that this is the only path to your dreams. You are a tiny, insignificant cog in a complex and often cruel machine, but you hope that one day you might be the one giving the orders. You remember a funny thing your master once said to a patron who complained about the price of a painting. Art is long, but life is short. So you better pay up, because I'm not getting any younger, and the lead white isn't getting any less toxic. He laughed a short, bitter bark, and the patron, somewhat chastened, paid. You realize then that even the master is at the mercy of the system, a system that values the final product more than the life of the person who created it. You are a tool, a means to an end, and your worth is measured only by your utility. The social strata of the art world is a sharp and unforgiving hierarchy, and you are at the very bottom. You're not even considered a true artist yet. You're an apprentice, a garzone, a boy. You have no rights, no pay to speak of, just a roof over your head, food in your stomach, and the promise of a future you are working your fingers to the bone for. The other apprentices, all older and more experienced than you, are a mix of personalities. Some are kind, offering you advice and showing you the shortcuts they've learned. Others are brutal, seeing you as competition or just a punching bag for their frustrations. The master's family, his wife and children, look down on you with a mixture of pity and contempt. You are a part of their household, but not one of them. You eat in the kitchen, sleep in a cramped, cold attic space, and are always on call. The concept of downtime is a modern invention. Your life is a constant state of being on. Even when you aren't actively working, you are expected to be available to run an errand, to fetch a tool, to clean up a spill. The only time you truly feel like you are in control of your own life is in the few precious moments before sleep, when you can close your eyes and dream of the art you will one day create. And then you wake up, and the stench of Florence, the backbreaking labor, and the toxic dust of your trade come rushing back, a cruel and unforgiving reality. The workshops of Florence and other great cities like Rome and Venice were not the tranquil, solitary spaces we often imagine. They were bustling, noisy, and highly competitive businesses. A successful master might have a dozen or more apprentices and assistants, each with their own specialized tasks. One person might be a master at grinding pigments, another might specialize in preparing plaster for frescoes, and another might be a skilled carver of frames. You, as a new apprentice, have to learn a little bit of everything, becoming a jack of all trades before you can even begin to specialize. The master is not just an artist. He is a shrewd businessman, a manager of a small army of laborers, a negotiator of contracts, and a politician. The master's success depends on his ability to not only create stunning works of art, but to manage his workshop efficiently and secure lucrative commissions from powerful patrons who are often just as demanding and difficult as the master is himself. This is a business, and you are a part of the workforce. It's a very modern concept, this idea of an artist as a business owner, but it was the brutal reality of the Renaissance. There were no handouts, no grants, and no safety nets. You either worked or you starved. Your existence is a constant reminder that the beautiful art of the Renaissance was built on a foundation of hard labor, toxic materials, and the relentless drive of people who had no choice but to succeed. You spend your days covered in dust, plaster dust, marble dust, pigment dust. You have calluses on your hands and a permanent ache in your back. You've forgotten what it feels like to have clean fingernails. But in these moments of backbreaking labor, you are learning the fundamentals of your craft. You are learning the texture of wet plaster, the way it absorbs paint, the precision required to apply it before it dries. You are learning to see color not just as a visual sensation, but as a physical substance, a concoction of minerals and oils that has its own weight and density. You learn to appreciate the patience required to create a beautiful work of art, that it is not just about a flash of inspiration, but about the slow, methodical, and often painful process of creation. You are an unseen hand, a ghost in the background, but your work is everywhere. You helped grind the pigments for that beautiful fresco in the church down the street. You helped prepare the panel for that portrait of a wealthy merchant. And in these small, hidden contributions, you find a flicker of pride. It is not your name that will be remembered, but you know that a piece of you is in that work. A piece of your toil, your sweat, and your aching hands. This is the truth of your life. You are a creator, but you are also a worker. And in this era, the line between the two is often a blurred and painful one. You're no longer the naive boy who arrived in Florence. The grime has worked its way under your fingernails, and the ache in your back is a constant companion. Your hands, once soft, are now rough and calloused. You've graduated from the most menial tasks, but your life is still far from glamorous. You now get to help the master with commissions, a process that is both thrilling and deeply humbling. The thrill comes from being a part of something truly grand, like a fresco on a chapel wall, watching a blank plaster surface transform into a vibrant scene of saints and angels. The humility comes from realizing that your artistic vision is completely secondary to the whims and desires of the patron paying for the work. Patrons are the lifeblood of the artistic world, but they are also a source of unending stress. These are not benevolent art lovers. They are powerful, wealthy, and often arrogant men and women who see art as a status symbol, a way to display their piety, their wealth, and their social standing. Their commissions are not just about beauty. They are political statements, expressions of family pride, and even tools for securing a place in the afterlife. And your master, and by extension, you are at their beck and call. The patron decides the subject matter, the size of the work, the materials to be used, and even the specific details that must be included. You remember the time a wealthy wool merchant commissioned a painting of the Nativity, but insisted that the Virgin Mary's robes be the exact shade of blue found in the most expensive lapis lazuli, an exorbitantly priced pigment, to show off his wealth. The master, needing the money, had to agree. You spent weeks grinding the precious stone, each grain of blue dust feeling like a tiny piece of gold slipping through your fingers, knowing that it was all for a man's vanity. Another patron, a powerful banker, insisted that his own face be painted onto a minor saint in a large fresco, a subtle but unmistakable way to immortalize himself and remind everyone who was really in charge. The master, despite his reputation, has no real artistic freedom. He is a contractor, a hired hand, and his job is to fulfill the patron's vision, no matter how uninspired or mundane. Your life is a constant series of negotiations, arguments, and compromises. You listen from a distance as the master debates with a patron about the price of a work, the number of figures to be included, and the deadline for completion. A common trick patrons use is to pay in installments, which gives them leverage. They can withhold a payment if they are unhappy with some small detail, leaving your workshop in a state of financial precarity. This isn't about pure artistic expression. It's about business, and the patron holds all the power. A funny conversation you overheard between the master and another artist went something like this. The patron wants a horse with the head of a lion and the wings of a dove. The other artist sighed, and I'm supposed to make it look pious. Your master just shook his head and grumbled. At least he's not asking for his own face on the baby Jesus. Not this week, anyway. It was a joke, but you knew there was a kernel of truth in the shared frustration. One of the most profound struggles is the lack of a personal artistic voice. You are trained to imitate, to follow the master's style, not to develop your own. The workshop operates like a factory with a distinct style that is expected by patrons. If you are an apprentice in the workshop of Botticelli, your job is to learn to paint like Botticelli, not to develop a completely different style. The goal is to produce art that is recognizably from that workshop to ensure brand loyalty and maintain the master's reputation. Your talent, your potential for innovation, is often suppressed for the sake of efficiency and consistency. Your master's name is on the final product, but you, along with the other apprentices, are the ones who do most of the work. You paint the backgrounds, the drapery, the less important figures. You are a ghost, your contributions hidden beneath the surface of the work. This raises a fascinating and still debated question among art historians. To what extent are the masterpieces of the Renaissance a product of a single genius? And to what extent are they the collective work of a skilled and anonymous workshop? The truth, as you know it, is a complex mix. The master's vision is the guiding force, but the hands that bring that vision to life are a team of anonymous laborers whose contributions will never be officially recognized. As you become more skilled, you are entrusted with more important tasks. You are now the one preparing the wooden panels, carefully sanding them down to a perfectly smooth surface, and applying layer after layer of gesso, a task that requires patience and a steady hand. You are also the one who now mixes the more expensive pigments, measuring them out with the meticulous precision of an alchemist. The master trusts you not to waste these precious materials, and in that trust you find a small measure of pride. You are no longer just a laborer, you are a craftsman, an essential part of the production process. You learn the secrets of the trade, how to mix egg yolk and pigments, to create tempera paint, how to apply thin glazes of oil paint, to create luminous effects, and how to use gold leaf to create a sense of divine radiance. This specialized knowledge is a privilege, a skill that few people outside the artistic guild will ever possess. It is a secret language, and you are slowly but surely learning to speak it fluently. A less glamorous but equally essential part of your life is the sheer physicality of creating large-scale works. You are now a part of the team working on a large fresco in a new chapel. This is a monumental undertaking that requires not just artistic skill, but the endurance of a construction worker. You spend your days perched on rickety scaffolding, high up near the vaulted ceiling, your neck and back aching from constantly looking up. The work must be done in small sections, or giornate, because you are painting on fresh, wet plaster. Once the plaster is dry, the color can no longer be absorbed and the work is ruined. This means you must work quickly and with absolute precision. You get about 8 hours to complete a section, and you learn to plan every brushstroke in advance. The stress is immense. You are constantly aware of the ticking clock, the unforgiving nature of the medium. The plaster is warm to the touch, and you can feel it slowly hardening beneath your brush, a silent and relentless reminder of your own mortality and the finality of your choices. There is no room for error. A mistake means you have to chip out the plaster and start over, a costly and time-consuming process. The sheer physical and mental toll of this work is something you will carry with you for the rest of your life. The constant grind of work, the pressure from patrons, and the physical demands of your craft leave little room for a personal life. Your world revolves around the workshop. Your social circle is made up of other apprentices and artists, a community of hardworking, often cynical men who share the same struggles. You spend your evenings not in taverns, but often back in the workshop preparing for the next day, cleaning brushes and listening to the master lecture on perspective and anatomy. The master, for all his gruffness, is your teacher, your employer, and your de facto family. You learn not just about art, but about life, about navigating the treacherous social landscape of the city, and about the brutal realities of survival. You see other apprentices come and go, some leaving to join another workshop, others simply disappearing, unable to handle the demanding life. You, however, are a survivor. You are tough. You have a vision, a dream of one day having your own workshop, your own apprentices, and your own commissions. It is that dream that keeps you going, that gets you out of your cramped, cold bed every morning, and that makes you endure the smell of Florence, the ache in your back, and the silent poison in your pigments. A final sobering truth you learn is that the art you create is not for everyone. The beautiful frescoes and intricate portraits are for the wealthy, the powerful, and the church. The common person, the farmer, the laborer, the shopkeeper, will never have the money to commission such a work or the leisure time to appreciate it. They will see the art in churches, but it is art that serves a religious purpose, a tool for teaching biblical stories to a largely illiterate population. The art is beautiful, but it is not democratic. It is a commodity, a luxury item for the elite. A small, strange detail you notice is that many of the most popular religious paintings feature very specific plants and animals in the background that are known to have been a patron's family crest or symbol. It's a subtle way of leaving a mark, a silent shout of, "I was here, I paid for this," that only a few people would understand. It's a reminder that even in the most sacred of spaces, earthly power and ego still hold sway. The art is not just for God, it's also for man. And you, the artist, are simply the medium through which that power is expressed. The constant grind continues, but now you have a new responsibility, one that fills you with a mixture of excitement and fear. You are now the one trusted with mixing the most crucial colors. The master has seen your skill and your patience, and he has deemed you worthy of handling the truly precious and truly dangerous materials. This is where the unseen dangers of your trade become an even more intimate part of your daily life. You're no longer just grinding a general red or blue. You are now the keeper of the pigments, the alchemist of the workshop. You have to be meticulous, precise, and most of all, you have to be careful. The beautiful colors you create are slowly, inexorably poisoning you. Let's talk about the blues. You remember the cheap common azurite with its coppery dust? Now, for the most important commissions, you are given a tiny, precious lump of lapis lazuli. The master treats it with a reverence usually reserved for religious relics. It's expensive, sometimes more valuable than gold. To make ultramarine blue from it, you have to grind the stone into a fine powder and then wash it repeatedly in a paste made of wax, resin, and linseed oil. The process is painstaking, and the color that leaches out is pure, brilliant, and divine. But the dust from the initial grinding is still there, still a potential threat. And there's also the constant worry of waste. If you spill even a pinch of this powder, you could be in serious trouble with the master, maybe even lose your place in the workshop. You remember the master telling you a funny story about a fellow artist who was so paranoid about a thieving apprentice stealing his lapis lazuli that he slept with the bag of pigment under his pillow, only to wake up with his face stained blue. A joke, yes, but a vivid illustration of the value and anxiety surrounding these materials. Then there are the more truly insidious pigments, the ones that don't just stain your hands, but actively work to shorten your life. You are now in charge of preparing lead white. It's the most common white pigment used for everything from highlights to preparing the gesso base. To make it, you take sheets of lead and expose them to vinegar vapors and animal dung, which creates a chemical reaction that forms a white layer of basic lead carbonate. The process is slow and smelly, and you have to scrape off the white layer and grind it into a fine powder. As you grind it, the fine white dust fills the air. You try to hold your breath to cover your mouth with a cloth, but it's impossible to avoid all of it. You feel the dust settle on your skin. You taste it in the air. The master and his master before him all told you it was a necessary evil. But you now know in a way that your younger self couldn't have imagined that this seemingly innocent powder is slowly attacking your body. You've noticed the trembling in your hands, the slight but persistent ache in your stomach. You've seen older artists with the grayish-blue line on their gums that is a telltale sign of lead poisoning. This is the price of creation. See, the most shocking and little-known detail you've learned, however, is about the specific materials you work with for different types of commissions. For example, for an altarpiece, you might use a wide range of colors from the expensive lapis lazuli to the humble earth pigments. But for a portrait, you might use a more restricted palette, one that is specifically chosen to flatter the sitter. The true secret, the one that few people know, is that for some of the most sacred religious works, a master might use powdered human bone mixed with the pigments to create a certain pale, otherworldly white. It was a practice not widely talked about, a macabre secret of the trade. The idea was that the essence of the deceased would be transferred to the painting, giving it a deeper sense of holiness and spiritual weight. The bones were often sourced from old charnel houses, and you, the apprentice, were the one who had to grind them into a fine, colorless dust. It's a chilling detail that reminds you of the deep and often strange blend of spirituality and practicality that defined the artistic world of the Renaissance. It also raises another fascinating question that historians still debate: to what extent did these hidden rituals and materials actually influence the final aesthetic of the artwork? And to what extent were they simply a form of artistic superstition? The knowledge you are accumulating is not just about technique, it's about the very secrets of your craft, the hidden truths that are passed down from master to apprentice. You are learning a language that is not spoken in words, but in the careful measuring of a pigment, the precise angle of a brushstroke, and the feel of wet plaster against your hands. You are a repository of this ancient knowledge, and that gives you a sense of purpose and pride, even in the face of the backbreaking work and the slow creeping sickness that comes with it. You are a part of a lineage, a chain of craftsmen that stretches back for generations. You remember the master's old gnarled hands, showing you how to hold a brush just so, how to thin a glaze with just the right amount of oil. These are lessons that you will one day pass on to your own apprentices if you are lucky enough to have them. But for now, you remain in the shadow of the master. Your days are long and your nights are filled with the lingering smells of the workshop. Your body aches and your mind is constantly working, replaying the day's tasks, planning for the next. The work is physically and mentally exhausting, but there is a strange satisfaction in it. You are building something. You are creating beauty in a world that is often ugly and brutal. The art you help create will outlive you, and the poison that is slowly killing you is in a way the price you pay for immortality. You are an artist, a craftsman, a laborer, and a ghost. Your life is a tapestry of contradictions, a blend of beauty and danger, of creation and destruction. And as you lay in your cramped attic space with the sounds of the city fading into a dull hum, you know that this is your life for better or for worse. You would not trade it for anything. You are an artist, and this is the awful, beautiful truth of your existence. The master is a complex man, and his workshop is a microcosm of the Renaissance art world. It is a business, a school, and a family all rolled into one. You are no longer a newcomer, but a crucial part of this ecosystem. Your daily tasks now involve a delicate dance between your master's demands, the patron's expectations, and the brutal reality of the marketplace. This is where you learn that being a good artist isn't enough. You must also be a shrewd business person, a diplomat, and sometimes a cutthroat rival. The art world is not a gentle place of shared creative spirit. It is a competitive, often brutal arena where commissions are won, and lost reputations are built and destroyed, and a single misstep can mean financial ruin. The business side of art is a cold shower to any romantic notions you may still have. You watch as the master negotiates a new contract with a wealthy merchant. The contract is not a simple agreement. It is a meticulously detailed legal document, often drawn up by a notary. It specifies the subject matter, the number of figures, the materials to be used, down to the specific types of pigments, and the amount of gold leaf, the deadline, and the payment schedule. The patron is often a shrewd businessman himself, and he wants guarantees. A common clause in these contracts is a fine for every day the work is late. Another is a clause that allows the patron to withhold the final payment if they are not satisfied with the finished product. This puts the master, and by extension the entire workshop, in a constant state of pressure. Your work is not a product of leisurely inspiration. It is a commodity, and you are on a tight schedule. The funny thing is, you notice that these contracts often included a clause about divine intervention, basically an out for the artist if a natural disaster or plague came through. The patron might not trust the artist, but they sure did fear God. You also witness the fierce rivalries between workshops. Florence is a small city and everyone knows everyone else's business. Artists are constantly trying to undercut each other for commissions, spreading rumors and even copying each other's styles. The master's main rival, another well-known painter on the other side of the city, is a source of constant stress and annoyance. You often hear the master grumbling about the rival's sloppy work or his cheap materials, but you also notice him sending one of the younger apprentices to discreetly spy on the rival's workshop to see what new commissions they have and what techniques they are using. It's a game of espionage and one-upmanship. The art world, as you know it, is a cutthroat business. And the truth is, a master's success is often as much about their connections and their business acumen as it is about their talent. They are part of a guild, a powerful organization that regulates the art trade, sets prices, and arbitrates disputes. You learn that to be a successful artist, you have to be a part of this system to play by its rules and to have a network of powerful people who can give you commissions and protect you from your rivals. As you become more senior in the workshop, you are entrusted with a new, less glamorous but equally important task: preparing the workshop for a patron's visit. This is a theatrical performance, a carefully orchestrated show to convince the patron that they are commissioning a work from a respectable, well-organized, and highly talented artist. The workshop is cleaned, the mess is hidden, and the most impressive-looking works are put on display. You and the other apprentices are instructed to look busy, to be seen grinding pigments or carefully painting a detail, but not so busy that you can't be called to attention. The master puts on his best clothes, a stark contrast to his usual paint-splattered tunic, and he practices his sales pitch. You listen as he flatters the patron, promises them the world, and subtly hints at the high demand for his work, suggesting that they must act quickly to secure his services. It's a performance, a piece of acting that is just as important as the painting itself. A fascinating and often overlooked detail is how workshops would often reuse old drawings and sketches for new commissions, a way to save time and effort. The patron might think they are getting a completely unique work, but in reality they are getting a new variation on an old theme. It raises the question that historians still debate: at what point does an artist's recycling of old motifs become a form of creative dishonesty? And when is it simply a practical necessity of a busy workshop? Your own work is slowly but surely improving. The master is now allowing you to paint more than just backgrounds. You are now entrusted with small figures, with details of a landscape, with the folds of a drapery. These are small victories, but they are yours. You are starting to develop a sense of your own hand, your own unique way of seeing and painting. But you are still a long way from being a master yourself. The path is long, and the competition is fierce. You see other apprentices leave the workshop, some to start their own, some to join another master, and some to give up on art altogether. The life of an artist is not for the faint of heart. It requires a singular dedication, a relentless drive, and a tolerance for hardship that most people simply don't possess. As you work, you become intimately familiar with the city around you. The city itself is a character in your life, with its narrow, smelly streets, its crowded marketplaces, and its beautiful but often austere churches. You see the rich and the powerful, the Medici and other wealthy families walking through the streets with their entourages, and you see the poor, the beggars, and the sick huddled in the corners. The art you create is for the former, but the reality of your life is closer to the latter. You are in a strange position, a bridge between two worlds. You live and work among the common people, but your purpose is to create beauty for the elite. And you are constantly reminded of this duality. Remember that beautiful fresco of the Last Judgment you helped with? You know that the pigments came from grinding some of the most toxic materials, and the gold leaf was paid for by a merchant who likely profited from usurious loans. The beauty is there, but so is the ugliness, the hypocrisy, and the cold, hard truth of the world. You've survived the initial years, and you've honed your craft. Your hands are steadier, your eye is sharper, and your knowledge of pigments and techniques is vast. The master now sees you not just as a pair of hands, but as a skilled assistant. You've earned a small measure of respect, and with it, a small measure of independence. This is where you begin to see the possibility of a life beyond the master's workshop, a life where your own name might be attached to a work of art. But this nascent sense of fame is a fragile, fleeting thing, more a glimmer than a steady light. The reality of being a recognized artist is a brutal and unpredictable roller coaster. You get your first real taste of recognition when the master allows you to take on a small commission on your own, a portrait for a local baker. It's not a grand altarpiece, not a fresco for a chapel, but it's yours. You prepare the panel, mix the pigments, and carefully plan the composition. The baker is a simple kind man, and he wants a portrait that makes him look prosperous and pious. You work with a diligence you never knew you had, pouring every ounce of your skill into the work. You paint the subtle lines on his face, the texture of his worn tunic, the glint in his eye. When you present the finished work, the baker is overjoyed. He hangs it in his shop, and people stop to look at it, to admire the detail, to praise the likeness. A few of them even ask who the artist is, and for the first time your name is spoken in connection with a work of art. It's a heady, intoxicating feeling. You are no longer just an anonymous hand, you are an artist. But this taste of fame comes with a new set of challenges. Other artists, your rivals, notice your small success. They might spread rumors about your work, claiming you used cheap materials or that you stole the design from someone else. The world of art is a small, gossipy place, and a single rumor can destroy a reputation. You also face the pressure of expectation. Now that you've been recognized, people expect more from you. The master who once saw you as an apprentice now sees you as both a valuable asset and a potential threat. He might give you more important tasks, but he also keeps a closer eye on you, making sure you don't overstep your bounds or steal his thunder. It's a delicate balance, a constant negotiation of power and respect. You're no longer just learning, you're competing. A funny thing you overheard from an old painter once when discussing a young, up-and-coming talent was, "He's good, too good. It's only a matter of time before someone accidentally spills a bucket of plaster on his best work." It's a dark thought, but it reminds you that success brings its own dangers. A particularly unique aspect of this early recognition is how it affects your financial situation. You're not paid a salary by the master. Your pay is the experience and the food and board. But for this small commission, you received a small sum of money directly. It's not a lot, but it's yours. For the first time, you have a small amount of disposable income money you can use to buy a new tunic, or maybe even a new brush or some pigments of your own. This financial independence is a huge step, a symbol of your transition from apprentice to craftsman. But it also means you have new responsibilities. You have to save, you have to plan, you have to think about your future. You can no longer rely on the master for everything. You're starting to build a life of your own, one brushstroke at a time. This is a crucial turning point, a moment where the awful truth of your life starts to feel a little more like a difficult truth, with the promise of something better on the horizon. However, the shadow of your time as a laborer still looms large. You have a reputation as being a skilled craftsman, not a genius. The patrons who commission you for small works see you as a reliable hand, not as a visionary artist. You are still an artist of the people, not an artist for the elite. The great commissions, the ones that make a name that lasts forever, are still out of your reach. They belong to the masters, to the men with powerful connections and established reputations. You understand that your path to true fame is a long and arduous one, a slow climb up a very steep and slippery mountain. You are not a Michelangelo, a man who was discovered and patronized by the most powerful family in Florence. You are a common man, a boy who came from nothing, and your path is one of hard work and relentless struggle. This brings up a debate that still captivates art historians: the role of social class and patronage in the success of a Renaissance artist. Was a master like Leonardo da Vinci a genius because of his inherent talent, or because he was born at the right time with the right connections and the right patrons? Or was it a combination of both? You, living and breathing the reality of the Renaissance art world, know that talent is only one piece of the puzzle. The other pieces are luck, connections, and the sheer will to survive and succeed in a brutal, unforgiving world. You are a testament to the fact that talent is not enough. You have to be a hustler, a businessman, a diplomat, and a survivor. You have to be everything. And as you lay in your bed at night thinking about the small portrait of the baker, you feel a sense of both pride and a nagging fear. You've taken your first step towards greatness, but you know that the journey ahead is fraught with danger and that the glimmer of fame can be extinguished as quickly as it was lit. The world is a city of constant noise and movement, a vibrant but often terrifying place. You are now a recognized artist, but you are not immune to the city's undercurrent of fear. This is an era where life is precarious, where a simple fever can be a death sentence, and where the most insidious threat of all hangs over every crowded street and public gathering, the plague. The ever-present shadow of disease looms over everything, a brutal reminder that your life and your career are not guaranteed. The first hint of the plague is a whisper or rumor carried on the wind from a neighboring city. Then it becomes a scream, a frantic flight of the wealthy and powerful to their country villas, leaving the poor to fend for themselves in the city. The city, which was once a bustling hub of commerce and art, becomes a ghost town, a place of silent terror. The stench you've grown accustomed to is replaced by the smell of fear of death. The bell tolls constantly, a morbid rhythm for the city's grim reality. Workshops' close commissions are canceled, and your income, which was just beginning to stabilize, vanishes overnight. The patrons who once flattered you now run from you, fearing that you might be a carrier of the sickness. You are not a genius or craftsman. You are a potential source of infection. The plague forces you to confront the fragility of your existence. You watch as people you know, friends, family, and even other artists fall ill and die with shocking speed. The master's workshop, which was once a place of lively chatter and activity, becomes a place of silent anxiety. You and the other apprentices must take extra precautions, washing your hands with vinegar, avoiding crowded streets, and praying for deliverance. But you know that your fate is not in your hands. It is a game of chance, a brutal lottery where the only prize is survival. The city's social fabric unravels. People turn on each other, blaming foreigners, the poor, and the sick for the spread of the disease. The beautiful city of art becomes a place of suspicion and paranoia, where a cough or a sneeze can get you a condemning look from a passerby. A particularly chilling detail that historians still debate is the role of artists during these times. Some argue that many artists stayed to create plague art paintings of saints and scenes of divine intervention meant to comfort and inspire hope. Others suggest most fled like everyone else, leaving only the most desperate to work. You realize that you're in the latter group. You can't just leave. You have no country estate to retreat to. You are trapped. The plague also brings a strange, macabre boom in business for some. Funerary commissions, paintings of memorials, and works for newly empty churches become a grim source of income for those artists who are brave enough or foolish enough to stay and work. You see the master taking on these jobs, but his heart is not in it. The joy of creation has been replaced by the grim necessity of survival. The art you create during this time is different. It is darker, more somber, and filled with a profound sense of loss. You paint scenes of mourning mothers, of stoic saints, and of the dance of death. These are not commissions of vanity, but commissions of grief, of a desperate desire for remembrance, in a world where life is so short and so cheap. The beautiful, vibrant colors of your youth are replaced by muted tones, by deep blacks and grays, a reflection of the city's mood. This experience changes you. You are no longer just an artist, you are a survivor. You have seen death up close, and you have seen the fragility of human ambition. The desire for fame and fortune, which once seemed so important, now seems like a cruel joke in the face of a pandemic that can take your life at any moment. You realize that the masterpieces you create, the ones that you hope will last for centuries, are ultimately just made of dust and oil and can be gone in an instant. The real masterpiece, you realize, is simply surviving. This realization brings a certain quiet humility to your work. You no longer paint for fame. You paint because it is what you do, because it is who you are, and because it is a way to make sense of a world that often seems to have no sense at all. It is a way to impose order on a chaotic, terrifying reality. When the plague finally recedes, it leaves behind a city that is changed forever. The workshops that survived are now in high demand, and there is a flurry of new commissions as the wealthy return and try to reclaim a sense of normalcy. The city, however, is a different place. The faces you once knew are gone, and a new generation of artists, of merchants, of patrons takes their place. You who survived are now a part of this new world. You are an artist with a new perspective, a survivor who has seen the worst of humanity, but who has also seen its resilience. You are still an artist, but you are a different kind of artist. One who understands that the most important masterpiece is not a painting on a wall, but the simple, unadorned fact of a life lived. This harrowing experience is a sobering reminder that the Renaissance was not a perfect, sanitized era, but a period of profound beauty borne out. With the plague a grim memory, the city is rebuilding, and a new energy fills the air. For you, this means a flood of new commissions and a fresh start. But this new beginning also introduces you to a dark, morally ambiguous side of the art world that you had only heard whispers about forgery. The demand for art is high, and the supply of authentic masterpieces by famous masters is low. This creates a vacuum, a space for the unscrupulous to fill with copies, imitations, and outright fakes. You, with your honed skills and intimate knowledge of different masters' styles, are perfectly positioned to enter this dangerous and lucrative world. The temptation is real, and it comes in the form of a wealthy merchant who approaches you with a peculiar request. He doesn't want a new painting, he wants an old one. Specifically, he wants a small painting of the Virgin Mary, but he wants it to look like it was painted by the great Giotto, who lived a century and a half ago. He explains that an authentic Giotto is impossible to get, but a newly discovered one would be priceless. He offers you a sum of money that is more than you could make in a year of honest work. The moral dilemma is immediate and powerful. You know it's wrong, a lie, a betrayal of your craft, but you also know that the money would secure your future, allowing you to open your own workshop to take on the commissions you want, and to finally be free of the master's shadow. You take the job and you enter a world of deception and meticulous imitation. You study old Giotto paintings not for their artistic merit, but for their physical properties. You learn to mix pigments in the old way, using tempera paint with egg yolk as a binder, and to use the older, more muted color palette. You learn to mimic the master's brushstrokes, his composition, his way of painting a face, a hand, a drapery. But the most crucial part of the forgery is making the painting look old. This is where you become a scientist of deception. You apply a thin layer of dark varnish to the finished work, then you bake it in a low-heat oven to make the paint crackle, mimicking the look of age. You meticulously scrub away parts of the painting, making it look worn and faded. You even learn to use a special mixture of dirt and soot to get the perfect aged patina on the surface. The process is a fascinating and terrifying blend of art and science, a testament to your skill as a craftsman, but also a constant reminder of your moral compromise. A fact that historians still grapple with is how many of the masterpieces in museums today were actually created by talented but anonymous forgers like you, a secret that is likely to remain buried in the annals of time. This period of forgery changes the way you see art forever. You realize that a painting's value is not just in its beauty or its skill, but in the story and the name attached to it. The Giotto you created is in a way a better painting than an authentic Giotto might have been. It is fresher, more vibrant, and technically more skilled than the real thing. But its value comes from the lie from the story that it is an old, lost work. This realization is both cynical and liberating. It makes you realize that the art world is a stage, a performance, and that the artists, patrons, and collectors are all playing a role. You are a puppet master, a manipulator of perception, and a creator of not just art, but of a false history. A funny thing you heard from a cynical old forger was that a good forgery is a love letter to the past, but a great one is a love letter to the fool who buys it. The money you make from this forgery is life-changing. You are now a wealthy man with enough money to buy your own small workshop, to hire an apprentice of your own, and to take on commissions on your own terms. But the money also brings a new kind of fear. You live in constant fear of being discovered. Forgery is a crime, and the punishment can be severe. Every time you see the wealthy merchant who bought the fake, you have a moment of cold dread. Every time a new artist looks at your work with a little too much scrutiny, you feel a prickle of panic. The money has bought you freedom, but it has also bought you a life of looking over your shoulder. You are now a part of the dark underbelly of the art world, and you know that you can never truly escape it. The art you create for your own patrons, the honest work, is now tinged with the memory of your deception. You are an artist with a secret, and that secret, like the poisons in your pigments, will always be a part of you. You are a forger, but you are also an artist. And in this world, the line between the two is often a very thin and dangerous one. With your small fortune from the forgery, you've established your own workshop. You are no longer an apprentice, you are a master. Your life has changed dramatically. You have your own gar zone to grind the pigments, to prepare the gesso, and to run the errands. You are now the one giving the orders, the one negotiating with patrons, and the one whose name is on the final product. Your workshop is a symbol of your success, a testament to your skill and your endurance. But as you climb the ladder of success, you witness a new revolutionary force that is beginning to reshape the art world and the very definition of an artist, the printing press. You first encounter this new technology not in a grand workshop, but in a small, dusty shop where a printer is laboriously setting type. He shows you his work, not a painting or a sculpture, but a book, a series of identical pages with text and illustrations. The book is not for a wealthy patron, but for the common man. It is a book of hours, a small prayer book, and it is being produced in the dozens, maybe even hundreds. This is a radical concept. Art, which has always been a unique, one-of-a-kind object, is now being mass-produced. The images which were once the exclusive domain of the master painter can now be replicated and distributed to a wider audience than ever before. This is the beginning of a profound shift, a quiet revolution that will change everything. The printing press is a double-edged sword for you. On one hand, it is a new source of income. You are commissioned by a printer to create a series of woodcuts for an illustrated Bible. You spend weeks carving the intricate designs into blocks of wood, a painstaking and unforgiving process. A single slip of the chisel can ruin the entire block. But the work is steady and the pay is good. The master who taught you would have seen this as a lesser form of art, a form of craftsmanship for the masses, but you see it as a new opportunity, a new way to get your work out into the world. Your art, which was once confined to a chapel or noble's home, can now be seen by a vast and anonymous audience. This is a form of fame that you never could have imagined, a new kind of immortality that is not etched in plaster but in ink on paper. However, the printing press also poses a threat to your traditional craft. As printed images become more common, the value of unique hand-painted work starts to shift. The wealthy patrons who once commissioned a painter to illustrate a manuscript now have the option of buying a beautifully illustrated printed book for a fraction of the price. The demand for certain types of traditional art, like illuminated manuscripts, starts to decline. The printing press is not just a technology, it is a competitor, a rival that can produce images faster, cheaper, and in greater quantities than you ever could. A fascinating academic debate that still exists is whether the printing press was a democratizing force for art, making it accessible to the masses, or if it was a disruptive technology that devalued the traditional skills of a craftsman. You living through this shift know that it is a bit of both. It is a force of progress and a force of destruction, and you are caught in the middle. The printing press also changes the way artists learn and practice their craft. Instead of relying on a master's workshop and hand-drawn copies, apprentices can now buy printed books on anatomy, perspective, and composition. This new source of knowledge means that an artist no longer has to be confined to a single workshop or a single style. They can learn from the best artists in the world, even if they have never met them. This is the beginning of a new era of artistic freedom and innovation, a time when an artist can be more than just a craftsman. They can be a scholar, a theorist, and an independent thinker. You who learned your craft in the old brutal way are both jealous of and in awe of this new generation of artists who will have access to so much more knowledge than you ever did. You remember how you had to learn perspective by trial and error by watching the master, and now a young apprentice can learn it from a printed book. It's a new world and you are an old artist in it. The most profound change, however, is the shift in the artist's self-image. Before the printing press, you were a craftsman, a skilled laborer. Your worth was in your hands and your ability to create a unique object. But with the printing press, your worth is also in your ideas and your ability to create an image that can be replicated and distributed to a wide audience. You are no longer just a painter. You are an intellectual, a creator of ideas. You are a part of a new global conversation about art, a conversation that is no longer confined to the workshops and noble courts of Florence. This new role comes with a new kind of prestige and a new kind of power. Your image, your ideas can now travel further than you ever will. You are a master, and with the help of this new technology, you are beginning to realize what that truly means. You've navigated the treacherous world of the workshop, survived the plague, and even dipped a toe into the morally murky waters of forgery. Now, with your own workshop and the revolutionary power of the printing press at your disposal, you feel a new sense of control over your destiny. But your journey isn't a simple upward trajectory. As you mature, a more philosophical and sometimes painful truth of your life begins to settle in the fleeting nature of fame and the brutal reality of the art world's constant churn. You are a successful master, but you are not immortal. Your name is known. You have commissions, apprentices, and a small but steady income. You are no longer just a laborer, but a respected member of the guild. You create stunning works, paintings of saints with luminous halos, portraits of merchants with a lifelike glint in their eyes, and religious scenes with a profound sense of drama and emotion. You are at the height of your career, and you believe that your art will last forever, that your name will be remembered for centuries to come. You have the arrogance of a successful man, the belief that your talent is a shield against the inevitable march of time. You forget that the world is a stage and that you are just one of many actors. The first hint of this painful truth comes in the form of a young, arrogant artist from a rival workshop. He is younger than you were when you started, but he has a confidence that borders on recklessness. He scoffs at your traditional techniques, your use of egg temper, your careful brushwork. He experiments with new methods with the rich, deep colors of oil paint, with a more dynamic, less formal style. He is seen as a genius, a prodigy, and the wealthy patrons who once sought you out are now flocking to him. You are suddenly old news, a relic of a bygone era. Your name, which was once spoken with reverence, is now spoken with a shrug. You realize with a cold jolt that the art world is not a place of quiet, dignified longevity. It is a place of constant change, of a relentless desire for the new and the novel. You are the past, and he is the future. This is where you confront the reality of legacy. You look at your own work, the painstaking hours, the toxic materials, the compromises you made, and you wonder what it all means. You see the dust gathering on some of your older works in the master's workshop, forgotten, unloved, and you realize that your beautiful creations are not for eternity. They are for now. They are for the patrons who paid for them, and for the generation that appreciates them. After that, they are just objects, pieces of history, things to be studied and admired, but not loved in the same way. This is a bitter pill to swallow. A fun little detail you remember is how a very old artist once told you, "The paint on the canvas outlasts the praise in the ear." He was right. You remember the kind words of the baker, the joy on his face, but that memory is just a memory. The painting, if it still exists, is now just a dusty object. This is a profound moment of change for you. You realize that your value is not in your fame, but in your craft itself. You turn inward, away from the fleeting praise of patrons and the fickle nature of the public. You focus on the work, on the simple, tactile pleasure of mixing colors, of feeling a brush in your hand, of seeing a blank panel come to life. You find a new kind of peace, a quiet dignity in your role as a craftsman. You are no longer an arrogant master seeking immortality, but a humble artist seeking truth and beauty. The love of the craft, you realize, is the only thing that truly lasts. The rest is just noise. Historians still debate whether the great masters of the Renaissance were truly motivated by a desire for personal glory, or if their true inspiration was a more humble internal drive for artistic excellence. You, having lived both sides of that coin, know that it's a complicated mix. The desire for fame is a powerful motivator, but it is ultimately an empty one. The real joy, the real meaning is in the work itself. And as you get older and the ache in your back becomes a constant companion, and the trembling in your hands becomes more pronounced, you find solace in the simple truth that you are an artist, and that is enough. Your life is not a story of eternal fame, but a story of a life lived for a craft. A life that was hard and dangerous and often thankless, but a life that was in its own way a masterpiece. The years have passed. Your hands are gnarled with arthritis, the tremor in your fingers, a permanent reminder of the lead and mercury that seeped into your bones. Your eyesight, once sharp and keen, is now clouded, and you need a young apprentice to help you with the finer details of a painting. You are an old man, a master who has lived a long and difficult life in the brutal world of Renaissance art. You've seen the rise and fall of patrons, the coming and going of artistic styles, and the quiet revolution of the printing press. Now, as you reflect on your life, you are no longer filled with the youthful ambition for fame, but with a quiet, somber understanding of what it all meant. Your legacy is not etched in stone, but it is there nonetheless, woven into the very fabric of the city. You walk through Florence, a city that is both familiar and alien. The streets still smell of human waste and cooking fires, but the buildings are taller, the styles more ornate. You see the works of a new generation of artists, the ones who once saw you as old-fashioned, and you feel a strange mix of pride and humility. They are building on the foundations that you and your generation laid, pushing the boundaries of what is possible. You see a grand new fresco in a chapel, a work of stunning realism and power, and you feel a moment of quiet awe. You know that the young apprentice who helped with the background of that fresco is a part of your lineage, a student of the craft that you have dedicated your life to. Your legacy is not in a single masterpiece, but in the chain of knowledge and the subtle ways you have influenced the artists who came after you. This is the final and perhaps most important truth of your life, that your legacy is not a monument to your name, but a contribution to the grand ongoing story of art. You are a part of a conversation that has been going on for centuries and will continue long after you are gone. The master who taught you is a part of that conversation, and the apprentice you taught is also a part of it. Your name may not be remembered, but your work, your skill, your dedication that will live on. It will be a small detail in a painting, a subtle technique in a fresco, a quiet influence on a new style. A detail that historians still argue about is whether the subtle changes in artistic styles across generations were a result of conscious innovation, or simply the natural progression of skills passed down from master to apprentice. You of course know it's the latter. It's an evolution, not a revolution. You remember the old cynical painter who told you that the paint on the canvas outlasts the praise in the ear? And now, as an old man, you know that he was only half right. The paint on the canvas may outlast the praise, but the love of the craft, the dedication to a skill that outlasts it all. You find a quiet corner in a small chapel and sit down, your old body aching with the effort. You look at an old painting, one you helped with in your youth. The colors are faded, the varnish is cracked, and the faces are obscured by centuries of dust and soot from the countless candles that have burned before it. It is not the pristine masterpiece you remember working on. It is an artifact, a piece of history, and it is beautiful in its imperfection. You see the clumsy brushstrokes of your younger self, the subtle touches of your master, and the quiet beauty of a work that has endured. You have left your mark not for fame, but for the simple, profound fact of having been here. Your life was not a glorious narrative of a genius, but a hard, brutal, and ultimately beautiful story of a craftsman who lived and breathed for his art. You were not a god, you were a man, and that is enough. Your journey ends here not with a fanfare or thunderous applause, but with a quiet understanding. The life of a Renaissance artist was not a fairy tale. It was a life of backbreaking labor, of toxic materials, of fierce competition, and of the constant nagging fear of death and obscurity. But it was also a life of profound beauty, of a quiet dignity in a job well done, and of the simple, unadorned truth that in the end, the work is what matters. You were a part of something bigger than yourself, and that in the end is all any of us can ever hope for.